Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns and welcome once again to another edition of Sound Off Louisiana. And we are coming to you from directly beyond the Office of Disciplinary Counsel. That's right, this building right behind us is the Office of Disciplinary Counsel. Today is Monday, March the 11th. And I'm here with contractor Billy Broussard. He's been featured on quite a few of our recent Sound Off posts. We came here for the purpose, for those of you who would have seen our most recent post, with regard to Mr. Broussard seeking the malpractice insurance policy information, both on Robin Sylvester as well as Mr. Mark Farr with Galloway Johnson. He set a deadline of noon on March the 7th for them to provide that information. Neither one of neither one of those two attorneys did so. And so, true to his word in that letter, Mr. Broussard has just filed complaints with the Office of Disciplinary Counsel for their failure to do so. So he has delivered them in person, and he contacted me to let me know he'd be doing this. So here we are. So, Mr. Broussard, would you like to elaborate a little bit on why you felt the need to file these complaints against Ms. Sylvester and Mr. Farr with Galloway Johnson?
Yeah, well, I believe it's just quite simple. You hire professionals to do a professional job, and if they fail to do so, then that's why they have boards like this you can file a complaint about them. So that's what I've done. That's
what he's done. And let me just say this. Everybody's familiar with our Louisiana term lagniappe. And so there's a little bit of lagniappe that are entailed in these two complaints. Specifically, Mr. Broussard provided us with an audio recording of his former attorney, Robin Sylvester. Now, most of you have heard Miss Sylvester on occasional audio clips before that he's provided to us. And let's just say she was not in the friendliest of moods. We'll let it go at that. But on this clip, and it's only 50 seconds, we're going to provide it for you. We're going to hear Miss Sylvester providing a little bit of advice. And that advice was that, hey, look, Rusty Stutes, he is the attorney for the Gravity District from which all of this originated, as well as Sam Gabb, the attorney for the Calcasieu Police Jury, basically circumvented her existence. She was serving as this man's attorney. And yet, in her own words, you'll hear it, they just chose to quit sending stuff to me and instead send it directly to Mr. Broussard. Well, that's engaging in an ex parte communication. It's a violation of Rule 4.2 of the Rules of Professional Conduct of the Attorneys. And so based on her own guidance, which we're going to give to you, that 50-second little clip, Mr. Broussard, you also felt compelled to file complaints just as your then attorney guided you to do. Am I correct?
Exactly so. So we have today with the other complaints.
So we got a total of 4 complaints. We're going to provide them to all of you. We're going to provide all 4 of them to you. And I think you'll find them quite intriguing, particularly the fact that Miss Sylvester herself, well, I'm not going to repeat what she said. Trust me, she was in a much more relaxed mode, but her words speak for themselves about the actions of Mr. Stutes and Mr. Gabb. So this is not some layperson's attorney. This is another attorney saying what these two fine, upstanding attorneys did. And let me just ask you this, Billy, as we wrap it up. We're going to keep this as a short video. We're certainly going to report on whatever the outcome of these disciplinary complaints are. But let me just ask you this. Did either Sam Gabb or Rusty Stutes, are you aware of any authorization that they had from either of the two public bodies that they represented where they had the legal authority to go in and file this restraining order against you, which most of you would know by now, got very damning emails from Kelly Fontenot. That's one of the ones that Miss Sylvester said, I'm not going up against Kelly Fontenot. She said the same about Rusty Stutes. She said the same about, quote, crooked judges. And we would have to presume that one of those judges would be Judge David Ritchie, whom she would have had to make the oral arguments for. But my question of you, Mr. Broussard, have you ever been able to lay your hands or see where either one of these two attorneys had any authorization to do this?
No, we have not, and we've checked the minutes of the meetings. It's not there, so from what I can tell, they just acted on their own and came after me and denied me my public records requests and would not allow me to public meetings to discuss this project at work that we have performed on Indian Bayou. But no, sir.
All right, so basically it looks like we've got two attorneys. And by the way, once I saw all this, I sent them an email asking them, can you provide me with any evidence of the bodies you represent giving you the authority to do this? All I can tell you, folks, is when I tried to send a subsequent email, I found out that my IP address had been blocked, and I was unable to send anything to these folks. So I guess I have a little something in common with you in that they're trying to prohibit you from communicating with the bodies or making public records requests, and they did so in the high-tech way with me, or at least, let's just put it this way, my IP address was blocked from sending them emails.
I guess I will mention, not to interrupt, is the point when you asked them about the attorney, them billing the taxpayers for
I'm glad you brought that up. I also asked, I wanted to see the invoices. Now, Mr. Gabb was good enough of a person to say he didn't bill. He didn't bill a dime to the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury for placing him under restraining order. And Mr. Gabb also told me that at that time he had just begun work for the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury, and that this was pretty much all Rusty's doings, which is all well and good, but as you'll see as the backup support on Mr. Gabb's complaint with Office of Disciplinary Counsel, it's got his signature on there, okay? It's got his signature on the injunctive relief, so you're not going to be able to just dump this off on Rusty, but I do find it interesting that Mr. Gabb, in a phone call with me, wanted to minimize his involvement in this. You would wonder why he would want to do so if he thought everything was so on the up and up. But now with regard to Mr. Stutes, and we provided it before, he has flat said, you're not getting my invoices. They contain my mental impressions that would have been formed with regard to this litigation. I'll let you make any concluding remarks you may want to make, Mr. Broussard, but this man said in that certified letter that he would have the complaint filed if he didn't have an answer by noon on March the 7th. It's 4 days later, it's been hand-delivered, so even the mail wouldn't have beaten it by this time. Would you like to say anything in conclusion, Mr. Broussard?
I would just say that the constituents of Calcasieu Parish, I would request that they would look into this themselves. There's reasons why they don't allow me to these public meetings. There's something obviously there that they don't want the public to hear and to know. And we do know there's some major drainage problems in Calcasieu Parish, and when you clean up behind a disaster like that, there's evidence you see out there. And I think that the public needs to look into this. I believe there's going to be some answers to questions they've been having for years.
And I'll tell you what, folks, it's March the 8th. I think it must be 84 degrees. As you can see, Office of Disciplinary Counsel building has a beautiful fountain behind us. I almost feel like going and jumping in, but that might scare off a few of the viewers, particularly if I got into less clothing to do so. Some of the females say, well, that's it, we'll never tune in again. But we're believing that we got a few more episodes coming up about just what all happened on some of this work way back when, and some other statements made by some other...
We can only cover it up so long, and the evidence will eventually come to light.
It's becoming abundantly clear that there was an orchestrated attempt to deceive and potentially, as he has contended all along, fraud GOSEP and or FEMA. That's been your contention all along, right? Yes, and magically, everybody else got paid. The Gravity District got paid for its own internal workings, but they were perfectly fine with leaving you holding the bag. And I want to emphasize one last thing, and we'll wrap it up. John Moorhead, he was the gentleman at the Legislative Auditor's Office. In March of last year, he was incredulous that every bit of this work was eligible, okay? And he said the reason we know it's eligible is because it was signed off by Dan Kennedy, a FEMA worker. Okay, now Mr. Broussard has presented about Mr. Kennedy's obvious conflicts, living right on the bayou, and how he would benefit from having these waterways cleaned as they were. But I find it real interesting that most recently everybody seemed to have changed their tune. Now everybody in the room acknowledges, well, there was a ton of ineligible debris picked up here. That's an interesting contrast to what Mr. Moorhead said only a year ago. Now, I don't have a video of that, but I took extensive notes. We got a past feature. In fact, we'll give you a link for that past feature where we met with Mr. Preparer and Mr. Moorhead back in March 2018. It's been almost a year. I took extensive notes for a reason, and you'll see where he said every bit of this was eligible. Now, nobody's denying that there was a ton of ineligible debris removed here. The only thing that makes this man unique is he's the only one that didn't get paid. Amazing how the governmental entities got their own staff folks, at least according to what he has said. And everything he has told me so far has checked out. As you know, I'm someone that insists upon documented evidence. So far, he's not yet failed. I don't know how he's been able to do it. You know, I was a fraud examiner. I'll tell you right now, I don't know that I could have matched up with his determination to get the kind of substantiation that he's gotten. But I know he's been at it for a long time, and it doesn't look like he plans on quitting anytime soon. So once again, this is Robert Burns. We are so thrilled that you tuned in for this Sound Off feature, and we'll have another one pertaining to Mr. Broussard in the not too distant future. Thank you once again for tuning in.